Gruß, willkommen in einem anderen Aufregensvideo. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 30 of my Star Trek The Original Series Timeline Analysis series of videos. In this video I'll discuss the frequency of intelligent life in the area which the Federation occupied. This video really does move into areas of speculation, but with the objective of determining how many subject races may reside in the Klingon and Romulan empires. Understanding the possible density of intelligent life within this part of the galaxy also allows me to understand how strategic warfare would be conducted in the world of Star Trek, the original series. The method I'm going to be using in this video is to determine the density of planets with intelligent life on it based on many layers of assumptions. Thus, the error factor could be significantly high, but here it goes. Based on my study of the original series and also the animated series scripts, I'm guessing there are about 37, maybe a little bit more, alien Federation planets in the Federation in 2264. If we add the humans, this is 38 or a bit more. I'm specifically excluding all colony planets. I only want to look at the number of planets with organic intelligent life on them. I'm guessing the Federation has a rough radius of 400 light years in all directions from Sol or Earth, giving it a volume of 268,082,573 square light years. By dividing this volume by the number of Federation members' planets plus 1 gives me an average volume for each occurrence of intelligent life on a planet. The answer is around about 7 million square light years. This means on average each planet with intelligent life could be in a sphere with a radius of 100 light years in all directions. This may not be very much, but it means everyone on average is about 200 light years apart. As I believe most planets with intelligent life resides in the center zone around the galactic equator, the density will be higher in the central zone and lower in the two poles of the galaxy, that is the north extremity and the south extremity. You can play around with these numbers in all sorts of different ways, but it indicates if the Vulcans had a loose trading network, which was a sphere with a radius of 200 light years in all directions from Vulcan, up to 5 planets with intelligent life could reside in this sphere. More likely 7. There may be a possibility, as the density at the galactic equator is higher, it may even be more than this. Thus, the core initial members of the Federation, apart from the Vulcans, may only number 5 if it's on the same plane, or 7 if we include above and below. The Andorians, Tellarites, Rigelians would be 3, and there would be 2 to 4 others. Concerning this diagram, one race would be above and one below the Vulcans. Thus, all spheres would reside within the Vulcan sphere, even though bits do stick out. It is possible the Vulcan trading sphere is larger than 200 light-year radius from Vulcan, which would allow them to interact with more planets. This may be likely, but as I've no way to confirm if this is accurate or not, I'll stay with a 200 light-year radius as a nice, simple solution. If the Vulcan trading sphere was larger, the Federation space sphere would bulge out on the far side of the Vulcans, which may be actually the case, but it makes my nice neat sphere less neat, and unless I get some solid evidence to the contrary, I'll just simply avoid this for the moment. If this is correct, then United Earth would share up to 2 of the Vulcan trading partner planets, maybe even partially 2 more, that's in the north and south, as well as having 3 addition of its own, which were within the United Earth sphere, but are independent of United Earth, basically alien planets, not part of United Earth, particularly in the early stages of United Earth. If my theory of the Earth-Romulan War is correct, one of these planets would be on the border between United Earth and Romulan Star Empire. My wild guess is this is ANR, which was an offshoot of the Andorians, although this guess is based on the Enterprise Star Trek episode where the Andorians, that is the white-skinned Andorians, seem to be a critical race in between both the United Earth and also the Vulcan Star Empire. So why not continue with this general theme? It's a nice theme. Now you may ask a very valid question, so what? What's the significance of all of this? If this theory is correct, there are 3 significant points that we should consider. The first is, while the first 100 light years from any planet may be free of planets with intelligent life on it, once the united Earth moves further out of its sphere of influence, that's within 100 light years in all directions, we would then start to include fully independent alien planets. I expect some form of trading and non-aggression treaty would have been made with these planets, and while I doubt any would have undertaken a mass colonisation program, they may have had one or two colony systems as well. The Federation was probably dotted with independent systems, alien systems, within its borders. The second point to consider is when the United Earth and Romulans went to war, there may have only been a total of 8 planets with intelligent life on it known. I must admit I always had the impression there would have been a lot more, but this is based on gut feel and not on any time of modelling or script-based evidence, which is what I'm doing in this video. I've done the modelling and the galaxy does not seem as crowded as I always imagine from watching the Star Trek episodes. When you model something with a truly open mind and focus on the basic principles of the simplest solution, you can be sometimes surprised. This is why this video series has really surprised me on many other things, because it's basically challenged a lot of my preconceived impressions. And now I am considering ideas and concepts that I never ever considered previously. The last point to consider is to do with logistics and warfare in space. In a universe of small spacecraft with FTL drive, trade would be restricted to low volume and high volume items, which is similar, I suppose, to the age of sail on Earth. However, when it comes to warfare and supporting large fleets of spacecraft, food would have been a critical supply bottleneck, and we don't really have a truly huge merchant spacecraft fleet which can move at infinite speed to mitigate this issue. The Federation could have purchased basic concentrated foodstuff from the allied planets or alien planets to reduce the length of the supply line, making these planets with intelligence critical logistic supply value or bottleneck points. They become rather critical if you're going to engage in any kind of warfare. And we actually saw this in at least one other episode of Star Trek, the original series, when we had the Organians planet considered as a strategic point. Thus, this was strongly alluded in the episode Errant of Mercy, when the Klingons were going to use the planet of Organia as a base to engage in warfare with the Federation. Their fleet was temporarily based on the planet, and as long as Organia supplied food, it would remain there indefinitely. The Federation was highly motivated to remove the Klingon presence as a result. If the Klingons needed to supply the fleet from further away, it would need convoys of merchant spacecraft carrying food and escorted by other warships. The Federation could send small spacecraft which would prey on these vulnerable spacecraft, merchant spacecraft, and if the convoys were escorted by a large military spacecraft fleet, this would weaken the front line fleet. On the other side, Klingon craft with cloaking technology would have been very hard for the Federation to counter in the same way. The control of these planets with intelligent life would have been critical in any war between major multi-system political units such as the Klingons, Romulans and Federation. If, on the other hand, you're engaged in war with, let's say, a single system, then this would be less of an issue, as the defenders would be quickly swept from the system and all docking and maintenance facilities destroyed or captured, meaning any possible raiding craft would lack a logistic tail. While surviving spacecraft could cause some trouble for a short time, they would eventually run out of food themselves. In this situation, sending a convoy on a monthly basis with the food and other ordnance would be a rather straightforward and risk-free issue, with no downside. This assumes that you're attacking a single system. However, this would not work if attacking a multi-system political entity, and instead it would result in major logistic issues. It's possible the Romulans may not have understood this when they invaded United Earth and had to learn this very hard lesson. Even United Earth would have experienced this issue during the United Earth-Romulan War and learnt those lessons well accordingly. Possibly, when the cocky Klingons engaged in conflict with the highly experienced Romulans, the Romulans used the lessons learned to weaken and finally stop the Klingons in what may have been a costly lesson for the Klingons. This is, of course, completely a guess, but it is something that is quite reasonable, and I have a strong suspicion that the Klingons and Romulans did engage in some sort of hostile conflict with each other prior to the Klingons attacking the Federation. When the Klingons engaged in warfare with the Federation in 2244, they had learnt this lesson. After this date, all of the three major multi-system political entities understood the importance of logistic tails. While I've covered this in some detail in the past, let's recap our logistic issue. A person probably needs about 200 kilograms of mainly concentrated food per year. Could be less, but this would be the basic ration. Typical fighting men and women would need more food, although in the future concentration of food may be superior than in our time. So if we assume a 200 kilogram per person per year, I think we're fairly well within the reasonable range of reality. This assumes water is not an issue, which I assume would be the case if recycling is good. And anyway, they can drop by and pick up some ice to top the tanks at any particular point they wish. If we look at a specific example, I think in Errant of Mercy, each site had a fleet consisting of 8 capital ships, which would have a total crew of about 3,200 per side. Each capital ship would have been supported by a number of smaller vessels, which would increase the crew count to, let's say, 6,400 per side. Some logistics would be built in, and some group ground troops would also need to be included, in case some form of ground assault was required, putting this total up to 10,000 men or women per side, or Klingons per side. This would require about 170 metric tons of food per month. The Federation may have been operating about 100 light years from the closest friendly source of food, in this particular case the scenario in Errant of Mercy, which at typical merchant ship speeds would have taken 4 months to travel to the fleet. This means 4 months of supplies would need to be en route at any particular point in time. A colony ship would probably be able to carry 200 metric tons of food, which would keep the fleet going for a month. I would suspect you would also need a few more ships to carry photon torpedo supplies, parts, replacement crews, and troops as well. As this would be vulnerable to a Klingon raiding attack, I would suggest a few would be grouped into a single convoy, and at least one significant warship would need to be included, which may require yet more food or would weaken the fleet at the front line. While a ship like the Enterprise may have had 6 months of food on board, I suspect this was because it was designed for these long-range missions. After all, it was called a cruiser, and cruisers were originally designed to cruise. Most of the other warships designed to engage in a fleet action would have had probably less food on hand. Even the Enterprise may have swapped out food for more photon torpedoes and some ground troops in an actual engagement or major engagement. So we can't rely on all the ships containing all the food required to conduct an extended fleet action. If large-scale ground actions were required, this number would balloon. The problem is not insurmountable, but the further from a large planet which can provide you with food, the harder your logistic issue becomes. The issue with parts, replacement crews and munitions, such as photon torpedoes, would be even more serious, as this would need to be sourced from a major industrial planet, which may be many times further away. But I would assume starbases could store these non-perishable items in sufficient quantity for at least a short campaign. But in a long, multi-year campaign, this probably would end up being the main issue, particularly if there was constant conflict occurring. In summary, if your logistic base was significantly further away from the enemy than its logistic base was to it, you are at a significant disadvantage. The next point to raise is the economic impact of these planets that possess alien intelligent life. While the Earth engaged in a massive colonisation efforts, its economic returns were minimal, even after 100 years. Actually, it was probably really negative. And after 200 years, it could not even provide the economic power of a single organic planet with intelligent life, as long as it had the same level of technology as Earth possesses today, for example. I have estimated the total population of actual human Federation member planets in 2266, excluding Earth, would be about 2 billion people. That is the population of humans on those planets, which includes Mars and Alpha Centauri. As a typical alien planet at the technological level we enjoy today would probably have 6 to 8 billion people, the total population of all human colony planets combined do not even equal one alien planet. Vulcan would have a smaller population because of a longer lifespan, although this is only an educated guess by myself, and it's quite likely its population was 2, 3, 4, maybe even up to 6 billion people. There is no the original series script references which provide a clue on this matter, so it's all guesswork. However, even with this lower population, its economic strength would probably come close to equaling that of Earth because of superior technology and Vulcan logic. So Earth and all its colonies together probably only represented a power base or economic power base equivalent to just Vulcan, its one planet, and maybe at the very most one or two very minor colony planets. Now we come to another important question. If these organic alien planets are so economically powerful, how did United Earth by itself seems to stop the Romulan Star Empire? You need to remember that the Romulan Star Empire must have conquered a number of alien planets before the war. If the planet density was similar to United Earth, the Romulans could have had up to 5 conquered alien planets. The answer is, conquered planets don't give you the same industrial capacity as unconquered planets. The planet density was less than the Romulan part of space, giving them probably only 3 conquered alien planets. The trade relationship Earth had with the Vulcan trade planets gave it a significant economic benefit, as well as gaining some assistance from these planets. The United Earth must have had a significant military focus prior to the war. All these things together is the reason why United Earth prevailed. Once the Federation was formed, the combined economic power of the Federation would have significantly exceeded that of the Romulans. The Federation alien planets were independent and more economically powerful than conquered planets. Why was a conquered planet weaker than a free planet? Why would this be so? The first point is conquering a planet would give the Romulans what they needed the most, agricultural produce. The Romulans would have destroyed most of the industrial capacity of the planet in any invasion and had minimal interest in rebuilding it. All the focus would be an increase in food production. Also maybe to act as a trade location for manufactured products on the home world, sort of like the British Empire in some ways. If the Romulans were similar to Rome, which seems reasonable, then you would eventually expect those planets to consider themselves as Romulan and provide significantly greater industrial production to the Romulan Star Empire. But that would take hundreds of years, as occurred with Gaul, for example, during the period of Rome. There's no evidence the Romulan Star Empire was structured in this manner, so this is an assumption, but a reasonable assumption. So maybe eventually these conquered planets would provide the Romulan Star Empire with the same economic output as, let's say, trading partners in the Federation, but this would take a long time. As a result, if we look at all these assumptions, at the start of the Romulan-Earth War, the Romulans and Klingons may have consisted of a home planet and perhaps 1 or 2 minor colonies and 3 conquered planets each. Conquered civilizations each. The United Earth would have consisted of a whole planet, 2 minor colony planets, and 3 unique alien planets they were engaged in trade with, one of which may have been an active military ally, as well as Vulcan and its 5 trading partners. As long as United Earth was able to hold its own in the initial Romulan invasion, the economic strength of United Earth and all its allies or trading partners would eventually be overwhelming, even if it was not utilised fully. The other point to consider is United Earth, while it did not engage in wars of conquest, would have had a significant focus on its military due to its experience with 2 nuclear conflicts and at a later, less significant war with the Kazin, and also paranoia. United Earth would have lacked experience in some technology, there's no doubt of that, but it was not going to lack spacecraft and a focus on military strength. Finally, while the colonisation effort would have only had a military benefit, it was a benefit which the other allies lacked, and it gave United Earth more forward bases it could engage in war from. The planets with organic, intelligent alien life of a reasonable population of technology were a key economic factor and a critical military objective in any war between the forces of the Federation, Romulans and Klingons. If each of these dots represented a highly populated planet with a significant food production capacity, or even a low population as long as it could produce food, then in a war you would need to jump from planet to planet. It would be very similar to the Pacific War in World War II. Most battles between the major powers would focus on the critical planets on the border. For example, the Romulans would probably need to take this planet in order to drive deep into Federation space. If there was a conflict between the Klingons and Romulans, it may have been fought over this planet shown with the red arrows, with both nations possessing a close-by base planet to support the attack. If the Klingons fought against the Federation, the old battlefields of Axanar and Donut 5 would be a key focus area. It's assumed Organia would be avoided as they would stop any possible attack, so that's off limits in any particular war. I personally think this would be a good basis for a board game which covers any conflicts of this nature, that is Star Trek, wars, etc. And so we come to a close of my episode 30 of my Star Trek The Original Series Timeline Analysis series of videos, in this case discussing the frequency of intelligent life and its ramifications. The episode scripts can be found using the URL shown. Alle guten Dinge, kommen zu einem Ende.